Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome back. 17 and some change. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. I'm EQDES17. I'm here to bring you my 2 cents. So, now that the introduction's over and done with, the purpose of today's episode is to discuss a documentary, a Netflix documentary that I watched recently. Um, it's called The Manosphere. Some of you might be familiar with it. Um, I'm trying to find, I think it's Thoreau. I'm trying to find, I'm trying to find the reporter's name. Louis, Louis, Louis Thoreau. Um, I don't know if you guys know or not, but this is the same guy who directed, not directed. This is the meme. This is the meme guy. The rap meme. Um, chilling in my Fiat. You really had to see it. 16 pounds in my hand. Yeah, that little rap, that's him. Which I thought that's pretty cool. He's a cool guy, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen his documentary on Gaza. I know he does a lot more political ones and stuff like that, and a lot of people have called him like a liberal, a lefty, and stuff like that. And I mean, maybe he, like I said, this is this is the first documentary of his that I've watched. Um, and no, I like his demeanor. He seems like a respectable individual. He was a very welcomed contrast to the people that he was interviewing within the manosphere. Um, yeah, I'm sure I maybe some of his beliefs are further on the left, but uh, from what I've seen, he just seems he seemed like the adult in the room compared to the people that he was interviewing, and of course, there's going to be editing, and a spin is going to be put, uh, which is something that the participants were complaining about loudly. I didn't see much in that regard. I mean, I can't tell what was taken out and things like that, but I feel like it was the documentary had uh, an equal representation of their persona. Like if you matched like what you see yourself from their persona versus the persona that you were exposed to in the documentary, they should line up pretty well. Um, I do feel like there were more one-on-one opportunities in the documentary than you would see with these creators just filming themselves. I mean, there was more opportunity for them to be pressed, and you could tell Louis didn't have to press hard for these guys to feel pressed and to feel um, some type of way, whether that was judged um, or again, a lot of their trepidation or their short fuse also came from distrust of the source. Um, they assumed that he would be, uh, viewing them from a less than favorable lens, and then in turn trying to spin that to the audience and things like that. And again, I think uh, overall it was relatively fair, but I think it was something that focused on kind of one side of the problem. So like mainstream is gonna look at that and they're gonna say, "Oh wow, like there's this problem of we knew the incel community was an issue, and so look at this community that's also a problem, right?" But no acknowledgement is kind of made to like the context of where these ideologies, movements, and patterns stem from, right? There has been a lot that has changed in society and in the morals, the fabric of society in the past 20 years that have led to men being disenfranchised. And, this is a topic that, you know, a lot of a lot of females scoff at, a lot of people in general scoff at, um, but it is also the reality. Men are in a state where, by and large, they're not doing so well. They're eating a lot of L's right now as a gender overall, and it's driving a lot of them to extremism, extreme silos, and whether that means that they're um, becoming proud boys in the sense of like right wing activists, but uh, they're also finding themselves in more specifically to kind of like what we're talking about. Um, no, they find themselves in groups like this. You know what I mean? They find they end up latching on to grifters and looking up to them and stuff like that. And the pickup artist, the pickup community was a previous branch to kind of what we're seeing now. It was I think branch is the right term. It was a precursor, you know, um, to some of the mindsets and the behaviors that these guys are exhibiting in the manosphere. And I don't know if the game by Neil Strauss. I guess it was like a New York Times bestseller. So like I don't know if we're just like now seeing like a generation of like if we're seeing like the residue of like the pickup artist community um you know evolve into like the manosphere and stuff like that, because a lot of the concepts, ideas, and attitudes that the individuals in the leading the manosphere push seem like, I mean, they match pretty solidly with the ideas that the pickup community was espousing, and continues to espouse, in their small silos. You know, I took I took some notes, and maybe examples of these ideas will come up as I go through the notes. I'm sure they will. But it's just a general. I mean, to generalize the similarities between the mindset of the pickup artist, and the mindset of the manosphere people. Um, there is certainly parallels, identical. Um, um, Sorry, I lost it, and it's not coming back. It's not coming back anytime soon. Um, because I was gonna speak on some of the similar mindsets between the two that overlap. One of them being the power imbalance that needs to exist, in both the pickup artist world and the manosphere. You as a man, you have to have the power, you have to have the control, you have to be the one in charge. You have the final say. You are the leader because you are the provider. Um, and because historically speaking, the uh, this is the order of things. This is the natural order of things, right? Um, I've told you, and it's not that women don't like to follow, you know, um, but how you say it matters, and the and what domain you're speaking on matters as well. One of the wives of the individuals interviewed here actually said it good. She made a good point. She said it's we kind of stay in our lanes as far as responsibilities and power is concerned. I'm paraphrasing her, but it was basically like what happens in the kitchen is her business, and what happens like at work is his business. And I don't think that's perfect, but what I have said personally in the past is that I think it's good to be able to lead and to be able to follow, for both individuals, for both partners, and whoever is more acclimated, or whoever is more competent in any given situation can take the lead at that time. Um, and I've used the example before, like if I'm playing a game of pickup basketball with my girlfriend, I'm gonna want her to allow me to establish the lead. Um, Whereas if I'm at like a family dinner function with her family, and it's like the set, like I would want her to establish the lead. I mean, whether it's my first time meeting them, like more specifically, if it's my first time meeting them, you know, um, but this is just an example and stuff like that. And like if you're dating a female and she's an accountant, because a lot of men say like, oh well, yeah, they can handle the domestic stuff, we'll handle. But I mean, like if you're dating an accountant, maybe it's a good idea to have her involved in some of the finances and things like that. um yeah, I just think it's about both partners working to their strengths, and recognizing working with their strengths and their weaknesses, and being able to lead and to follow and stuff like that. And yeah, as opposed to, who wears the pants, you know. Um, it's tough to see like couples that are always kind of like jockeying for power and stuff like that. It's that's really tough to watch. You know what I mean? Um, so they let me see if any of these notes kind of like jog anything for me. A lot of them talk about rejecting the matrix, and the delusion might be that there's a specific cabal, um, whether that be a satanic one or a Jewish one or uh, the Rothschilds, or an Illuminatic one. Um, that's a theory that will not go away. I feel like it keeps getting recycled to every generation, and I know a ton of you, like anybody comments on, but if and when comments come in, I know they would say, do like look into it, right? Just what was every Eddie Bravo used to say? Just look into it, or uh, what was Eddie Bravo's quote? I think that was it. He hasn't been on Rogan's thing for a long time. Yeah, look into it. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will just tell me like, nah, you just gotta look into it. It's Bohemian Grove, and like it's all there, and like the cultic symbolism and stuff like that. But I mean, with or without that, um, the older I get, the more I move away from that theory. I mean, it's tough to keep three people on the same page. Never mind 300 or 3 million or 3,000 or however many Illuminati people there would be in this cabal, eh? There's always like multiple competing forces for power. There's never, and I don't like to speak in absolute terms, uh, but look into it. I mean, I feel like there's power is always being jockeyed for by multiple rival factions, and even within the power, there's a power struggle within the power. You know what I mean? I feel like a global cabal is absolutely like the logistics that would take for everybody to kind of like agree and like move in the same direction. Like, yeah, we're gonna enslave humanity so we can become fat and wealthy. And now it's like have things sort of moved in a direction. Like, does it not look like we're just labor slaves for the wealthy? I mean, yeah, it does, but that doesn't mean that there's a cabal. And I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about the Matrix. It's when you look around and everybody is driving in the same fucking car. I mean, whether it's a Toyota or a Honda or a Hyundai or a Nissan or even a BMW or a Mercedes or a Lexus, or, like everybody's driving the same fucking commercial car. Um, I mean, you might be like one little tier above somebody, and then you might see like 1 in 200 people is a superhero and they have a fucking Lamborghini. But then if you go to like where all the superheroes live, all the superheroes, you go to Dubai, everybody's in a fucking Lamborghini. And so like everybody has the same car. So whether everybody's driving the same car in a cheap world or in a cheap society, in a broke society, or in a wealthy society, everybody's driving the same shit, um, but localized, and they're all, they all have misery on their face, and they're going to work to jobs that they hate, and you know the trope, you know the trope, how we're slaves to a system. I mean, what all the but what they're talking about, all they're speaking on is financial freedom, right? And they're um sprinkling the language, giving it, dramatic language and things like that. But they're ultimately just speaking on financial freedom and um, not having to be an NPC, and you don't have to think like society is the boogeyman to like uh, seek financial freedom. You know, there was one guy, he caught a lot of heat for profiting off of OnlyFans, um, but talking shit about OnlyFans on a consistent basis. Um, and that's no, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but that's just another example of how uh, where society has gone in terms of um, men being disenfranchised or not being as needed, as wanted, as as things of that nature. Um, a female nowadays, like if you're an attractive female, like you don't have to like where you these chicks are getting like stacks. Like they're making so much money on OnlyFans. Like they don't need, you know what I'm saying? They don't need diddly, which is like I said, it's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just an example, maybe not of how men are becoming disenfranchised because it's the fucking men that are fucking making them rich off of these things anyways. But it's just another example of yeah, more accurately, it's another example of um, how much the dynamics has changed in the modern dating world and things of that nature. Um, they said it would maybe turn into a hit piece. They were worried that it would turn into a hit piece on toxic masculinity, um, which is understandable. I mean, as I've said before, toxicity exists in people. Um, I You got to be careful. You can't overuse that term, and that's another thing. I feel like that term was kind of overused to the point where it was used as like a bludgeon. Um, a lot of men they ask themselves like, "Yo, does this apply to me?" And you might say, "Well, that's good," but like, I don't know that whole toxic masculinity thing seemed to have spooked like a lot of men into kind of being uh, a lot less ambitious. It kind of scared a lot of men away from ambition, and then it made them feel like ambition itself was the wrong thing, was the bad thing. And when you take ambition away from a man, like or a person in general, like you take away their spirit. And so I think that's like we gotta be careful. Like, what are you talking about specifically when you talk about toxic masculinity, and what's the difference between like just toxicity in general? Like, can females not have egos? Overinflated egos, absolutely. But if you're just categorizing it to just like the male characteristics like aggression. Um, so females can exhibit toxic masculinity. Um, and you also gotta, so you really gotta be careful about like what exactly are you complaining about? Um, a lot of what we consider to be toxic masculinity in society and in the workplace is the same things that we um, you know click on the internet to view, or the same things that we need in times of crisis, and um, and in battle and stuff like that. Um, so we just kind of gotta be careful, like what we're saying when we talk about toxic masculinity. I think anywhere where we're um, and as long as it's not that, you know what I mean. If we're talking about hyper aggression, like I said, it's context matters, um, and things like that. You know, um, but if we're talking about uh, ideas that are oppressive to women, then we still have to be careful about what exactly are we meaning there. But that could be tending more into that uh, toxic masculinity. But it's just like a phrase that doesn't. It's a phrase that doesn't do much. It implies a lot, but it doesn't uh, hammer down specifics, so to speak. Speaking of, so maybe toxic masculinity. This guy, one of the guys, I think more than one of them, they're proponents of what's called one-sided monogamy. I've seen this in real life as well. Um, and maybe that falls under toxic masculinity. Um, I mean, certainly in today's day and age, you know, I just feel like, and I know a lot of people feel like, if you're gonna have a partner, like uh, neither of you are going to be happy if the other person is not uh, fully into you. But then you're saying like then you can argue, oh well, it's cultural and stuff like that, and you could make a cultural argument, right? You could say, oh well, the Muslims do it. They have multiple wives, but the wives don't have multiple husbands. And you could say history has shown us that our ancestors have done this in the past and stuff like that. Um, but I just feel like in modern days that's just uh, it's arrogant in the West in a Western society. It's just arrogance. It's pretentiousness. That's not proper pair bonding. That's not what pair bonding is. That's something else. Like monogamy, there's no one-sided monogamy. Like that's an oxymoron. You know what I mean? You guys aren't doing monogamy in that case. You're doing something else. You're practicing something else in that case. You said women don't want equality, they want a hero. I mean, some women want to be the hero, you know? I know plenty of women, bro. Like I know plenty of women that literally would not, have anything to do with a strong man. Like they're repulsed by strong men. And I think, and I gotta pick my words carefully. I think weak men are more of a problem, but they're Some women are repulsed by strong men. Some women are repulsed by and as they should be, more than some are repulsed um, by these egocentric characters. However, uh, there will always there will always be there is a subsect that's drawn to them. There is a sect of women who are drawn to a man that will unapologetically uh, uh, and boisterously, kind of bully his way through the world, you know. But it's certainly not the majority, as these people would make you think. You know what I mean? And when you talk to them, like everything that they say about the guy is yeah, they're attracted to him, but like it's a transactional attraction, right? It's not um, anything of substance of taste. It's um, one of these what do they provide and stuff like that, and it's another belief in the manis in the manosphere is that you have to you can only be cared about for what you provide as a man. And once again, that's only partially true because humans are very complex, and just generalizing i- is typically not going to work out for you, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is that connection matters, and emotional availability matters and stuff like that. And it's like uh, most of the people who don't realize that, who see these things as weaknesses, they don't maintain. Um, they don't maintain. A good example of I've seen pickup artists who were successful at because they weren't being cucks, and they were having success on a short term basis. Um, but it was destroying them on a long term basis. You know, but let me see. Um, mm, 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 mm. And I was going somewhere with that. I was gonna weave that into something, but I kind of lost the thread there. So I'm looking through my notes to find to find the next thread or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess because I was talking on like people will. I guess why I lost the thread is because I was trying to weigh multiple things. I was trying to weigh the weigh the numbers or whatever, but people people scream things like simp, but a lot of those, not all of those, a lot of those that they scream it at have healthier, longer, and more fulfilling relationships than they do. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Um, Manosphere people, pickup artists, yeah, maybe they will keep the girls that they pick up. Maybe they will. I know psychopaths that they will find out like what that I know psychopaths that can keep their women like hypnotized, so to speak, for forever. Right? They find out the specific fucking dopamine strikes and specific triggers and all this shit, and they just manipulate them forever. You know what I mean? Um, but by and large, the simps have longer and so to speak have longer and healthier relationships the um, than the arrogant folk, than the ones that approach dating as from a power dynamic, from the ones that play the game and are good at it. Um, they typically that's typically their reality. Um, some people say body count doesn't matter. I mean, I think body count definitely matters. I'm not gonna get into the potential pseudoscience of those who say that the pair bonding chemicals in women get ruined the more that they sleep with somebody, because that could just be anti-female propaganda. It could be. I mean, it could be true, but regardless, like outside of that, I think this might be very esoteric and not for everybody, but I do feel like you leave a part of your soul behind every time you do this. And, I also think it speaks to, it tells some things about a person, right? And the counter argument is like, well, it's in the past. We're talking about moving forward, and it's like, yeah, but unless you've consciously made a decision to change the past, it's probably going to repeat itself. Like the past is a very fair indicator of the future, unless you have made a conscious decision to make a change. Because in going back to the sim thing, I don't think that guy who did the freaking podcast, who did the documentary was a simp. Um, Louis uh, Giroux, Louis Thoreau. Um, like I said in the outside, I thought he was a cool cat. You know. Um, Another thing I wanna say about this is there's a few things I want to say still. You know, like I mentioned before, that the documentary doesn't do a good job of mentioning the broader context. And I spoke to that a little bit, talking about how men are eating L's, they seem to be disenfranchised and stuff like that. And so, um, to a lot of people, um, the red pill manosphere current situation is a counterbalance to third wave feminism, you know, um, and whatever, you know, however you feel about that, um, I feel like I don't even know if I feel like women are kind of like the new men, as far as like their dating habits and things like that. They wanted equality in the dating world. Well, more so in the real world, but in the dating world, and now they just seem to be acting like the men that they complained about 20 years ago. Um, Generally speaking, like hookup culture seems to be kind of uh, more celebrated on their side than more engaged with and celebrated on their side than it is on the men's side. And the men had traditionally been the ones that were you know um the accused of being the dogs and sleeping around and being promiscuous and stuff like that. you know um But of course, I mean, you go fucking centuries where women have like literal chastity belts that are like made out of metal and shit. And then, like, yeah, you have a sexual revolution, and it's like, yeah, of course, there's gonna be a large swath that wants to like just stick it to the man and just like step on their neck and like uh and dominate and you know um run the world the way that they felt like the patriarchy ran the world and stuff like that. you know um I do think that exists for sure. um these people said women's value lies in beauty when men have to create value. In the dating world, that's the thing. On its face, that sounds pretty fucked up. But in the dating world, that's a half truth. Um, because some people are attracted to uh, different things. But the guy tried to say like men aren't primarily attracted to. Louis was trying to push back. He was saying, some men some men aren't primarily attracted to beauty. Some men are primarily attracted to intelligence. For example, um, I feel like in the dating worlds, by and large, the primary attraction for men is physical, is beauty, right? I feel like, by and large, secondary and tertiary attractions might be for different reasons. Um, and maybe the secondary can turn on the primary. But uh, but then even that you can kind of, it's not. again, that's like that's an old. I mean, it's again, it's a half truth. Like it's kind of true sometimes. You know what I mean? But like a lot of women are making a lot of fucking money and don't need men to create the value, like I was talking about before. And so, you know, so that's that side. And yeah, some men don't, you know, I think that's a lot more rare for men not to look for beauty first. But you know, every lid has its every container has its lid, you know. And so um you might say a woman's value is in beauty, but like, and a man's isn't. But like hot couples, like it's not like the old days where, and I got this wrong in my first book, on a line, like, because it's not like the old days where you can see very often, you could find very attractive hot women who are like nines and tens. um Not to objectify them, but just for conceptualization, like it's tough. Like you don't find these type of women nowadays with ugly old men anymore, right? Like they don't need fucking sugar daddies anymore, right? Like less attractive women need, you still use sugar daddies, not bombshells. Bombshells, if they have a sugar daddy, it's an attractive person, like closer to their age range, or an age range that they would consider. And so what I'm saying is you're seeing more of a natural, like models dating models, or hot people dating hot people, and then everybody kind of falling in rungs underneath that, finding their own matches and stuff like that, which pushes back on, on the theory of where values um, lie, um, slightly, because again, that's still half true, um, or partially true. You know, men still are, in my opinion, primarily attracted to beauty, and women still are, in my opinion, primarily attracted to um, competence, right? But that brings me to this point, which is that one of the dangers of the manosphere and the pickup world and things like that is that there is a portion of it that is rooted in fact, right? There's some truth in the lies. There's enough truth in the there's enough truth in the generalizations. There's enough truth in the ideology in general, uh to make up for the generalizations, to overshadow the holes in the gap and stuff like that. Um, and so, do I think it's a wash in that these people shouldn't exist at all? Um, Not necessarily, but I think it's important to know that this is the far right of the spectrum. You know what I mean? Um, this is like this is like a worldview taken to like the absolute extreme. And you don't want to, some of you guys, you don't want to dump it completely because of that 10 to 25% that's useful, right? Like confidence is important, but arrogance isn't. You know what I mean? And so on and so forth, right? Um, there's a lot of truth in the lies, and that's tough, you know. Um, a lot of these guys are highly charismatic, which makes it more difficult for viewers to tune out. It makes it more difficult for women. It makes it easier for women to look past, a lot of their toxicity initially. And that's again where we talk about the short term and things like that. Um, thought there was some real antagonization of Louis. That was uncalled for. I felt like, well, again, when these guys, a lot of these guys were pressed, their insecurities started to show. I feel like overall, the extreme members of the Manosphere, their ideology is built in trauma, or at least the people that I seen, like they have like trauma is like written like all over their personality, and they all talk about it. They all talk about single parent upbringings and rough upbringings and things like that. I saw one of them. It showed a picture of him as a like flashback to when he was a kid, and man, did I see like pain mixed with emptiness, like emptiness and pain in that kid's eyes. um like nobody had ever heard him uh in his life. Um the, once again, does that mean that there's no issues, that women don't bring any issues to the table? Well, hell yeah, they do. You know what I mean? I feel like when we talk about right now, there's a battle of the sexes, and men and women are kind of like looking past each other. Like they're not, it's not clicking for them the same way. Like they're it's not working out as well as it has been in the past, and I think that there's blame on both sides. I think that there's a lot of blame on both sides, um, and I think yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of progressing over the past a lot of progressing and fast over the past 50 to 70 years, and it's created a lot of confusion, and we're still figuring out what it means to live as a secular society, And I think it's tough for everybody. I think it's tough for the religious, it's tough for the non-religious, it's tough for the conservatives, it's tough for the progressives, you know. But yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I don't know if it was the industrial revolution, but I'm gonna digress before I go down that road. Um, yeah, I think I want to say one more thing about, because they mentioned it, predator hunting. I guess one of the guys goes after pedos, and I just kind of wanted to really briefly on that. Obviously, you know, predator behavior and is and the people, like, it's obviously disgusting and horrendous, um and things like that. But I just want to say two things. We want to protect our vulnerable. We want to protect our vulnerable at all costs, but we need to make sure that that's our intention. Um, I feel like a lot of times people are using their righteous indignation towards pedos as an excuse to exercise their own uh, sadism. Um, so it's in the name of pedo hunting, I can string this person up and I can torture them to death and I can, um, you know, uh, and, and you can go as far as you want with it. Um, a lot of these people are um, very mentally unwell. These A lot of these people are basement dwellers who are uh, just like, they're not well. Like, they have a lot of mental health stuff. They're not normal fucking people, right? And not just by their disgustingness, right? Not just by their It's not just their disgusting choices in regards to sexual deviancy that make them uh, uh, abnormal people, right? They're abnormal people in a lot of ways. So to just like go up to them in public and start like doing illegal things like harassing them and punching them and beating them up, um, I mean, that doesn't really bother me. I mean, that's illegal, and like, but when people are like, "Oh, I'll kill," like, some people really get into it in terms of like what they're allowed to do now. And like, all morality goes out the window when you're talking about like what you would do to a sick person. Um, and it's just like, are we doing that for protection of the vulnerable, or are we doing that to flex our own demons, right? Like, are you really going to be the one that's there, like pulling out the person's fingernails one by one and dealing with all those sounds and all those smells and actually doing that? And it's like, if you have, I mean, I don't know, is that good? Like, what does that say? What does that say about your psyche, if you can? and stuff like that. Um, but I don't know. I've just seen it as like a weird way for people to flex, um, it, like what do you call it? The Purge. Like when they have the Purge on the movies and people just get to like go fucking crazy and like do whatever they want. It seems like a lot of people use, you know, these sick individuals as fodder for their inner purge desires. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, um, yeah, I think that takes us a little bit over an hour. That's kind of all the notes that I have and stuff like that. Um, yeah, um, that was that was another episode. Come back, see us again next week. We'll be right here. Things like that. Okay. Goodbye.